So this video is for mainly for the students who have not done assignment number 2 yet, and I'm going to show you how to plan an outline for this, okay? Here I am on the modules page, and here I'm going to click once again on the haven't started assignment number 2 yet page, and this is for you. And I'm going to go ahead and scroll down. If you look, here is the readings. Hopefully you've already read them and already looked at whatever other resources that you want to, okay? Now I'm on the planning and outlining stage. Please don't skip this because this is really where your essay becomes your essay, right? I actually made a copy for you, so you can click on this, you can get your own copy. I'm actually going to go to my copy. Here's an example, and we are going to do this together. So here's the planning and preparation. And first, I want to have you answer some questions. So here I am. What's the overall topic of both of the essays? So right now we are talking about Ben Adler's essay and we're talking about Charles J. Moore's essay. And the overall topic is plastic pollution. And plastic bag bans. And I think they both talk about that, so you could definitely say that. I'm going to turn this to a different color. Let's see if that's readable. No, it's not. Okay, let's go with, I'll just go with red. Here we go. Okay. So plastic pollution, plastic bag bans, right? You know, and the impact of plastic pollution on the world. I think both of them are going to talk about it. So what is the issue that both essays confront? We can kind of talk about that. They're both talking about plastic pollution. Oops, plastic pollution and plastic bans, right? And so we know both of those essays are going to talk about that, okay? Let's go ahead and which red did we use, actually? Not sure. I don't think that was it. This one? I don't know. Okay, so what are some of the main points and overall issues that both essays discuss? Well, when we look at it, let's go ahead and I'm going to copy this again. Both of them do talk about, you know, plastic pollution, and they talk about plastic bag bans. They talk about, you know, the increasing problem with the overwhelming amount of plastic in the environment and the oceans. I think both of them do talk about the oceans. Let's see, some of the overall that both essays discuss. They also talk about the economy slightly. Economy and plastic. And they also talk a little bit about, both of them do talk about the plastic bans, although they do have different and the ramifications, right? So they both talk about these things even though they have different opinions. All right, so when we come here and we are on what is the first author's main point or main points, okay? And I'm going to do a little bit of a shorter version of this. I think the example I have on the actual page, that is an excellent way to do that, but I think it's going to make this video a little bit long, so I'm going to try to go with this. I'm actually going to look over, I think, to my other screen. I think the first article that we're going to choose is, we're going to go with Ben Adler's. Let's go ahead and write it there. And I'm going to put in quotation marks because all articles go in quotation marks. Banning plastic bags is great for the world, right? And remember, it all goes in caps, right? Not so fast. It goes, not all of them, but the first letter goes in caps. I'm sorry about that. Not so fast. Okay, so that is our first article that we're going to talk about, just so that I know that that's what I am talking about. And I am going to put that back in our color. Okay, so here we are. I am going to grab the article right here. And if you have two monitors, it really does help. But you can do this in other ways where you can kind of just go to the next tab. So here's my article, right? It says the adverse effects. One of the big things, that one of his major ideas is the adverse impacts of plastic bags are undeniable. Okay, so that sounds like something we could definitely put down here. So the main points are that The adverse effects of plastic are undeniable. And if we're smart, we'll go ahead and we'll put this in quotation marks because we know it's a quote and we can use it again later, right? Okay, so let me get that back up here. Okay. We know that he talks about all of these other ideas, right, in his article that aren't necessarily his, they say, but he talks about the plastic bag ban. Paper bags may be worse. Okay, so that's another main idea that he has is that paper bags may actually be worse. Okay, so let's go ahead and put that down there. Paper bags might be worse than plastic bags, and we're going to need more of that obviously when we start doing the paper. Let's see what else here. Oops. Okay, let's see if there's more main ideas here. His climate change. Okay, so then we also know that plastic bags and climate change, or that sometimes plastic bags aren't necessarily better for climate change. So here we are. Plastic bags are not necessarily better for the environment, right? Okay, so that's another thing that he talks about. Recycle, and so we can actually put those quotes in there later on. It's degradable. That doesn't necessarily help. Still, environmentalists say this. Okay, and so he says, what if reusable bags are not necessarily good either? So he also talks about like some of his other methods. Reusable bags also can be problematic. Right. And then let's see, what are like his main they says, right? There's no, for one thing, he does say there's no easy answer. That we have to reduce consumption. It kind of says down here, reduce consumption, and be careful what we actually purchase. Okay, so his main idea is that, I guess I spelled that, is that we need to, right? So his major, they say, is that we need to lower consumption, like in general, and be careful of what we buy, right? And that's kind of like his main takeaway is that, but also you might want to say that, he says it's complicated. Okay, so there's his main points. So what is our second author's main points? Let's go ahead and get this one. Whoops. I don't know why it doesn't like me here. Okay, let me see. Let's do it right here. So here's choking the plastics with choking the oceans with plastic. Although it was my 10th voyage, he talks about plastics are common pollutants. Let's see. I mean, he has just lots of points about why it is so bad. So let's just talk about all the reasons why he says it's bad. Okay. Oops, not that. Here we go. So what is his main point? So let's go ahead and write the name of, let's go ahead and write the name of the author here so that we get that down. I think we use that one. So this is Charles J. Moore, and his article is choking the oceans with plastic. Let me make sure I got this right here. Choking the oceans with plastic. So that's right. Sorry. Choking the oceans with plastic. Okay. Again, articles go in quotation marks, and then the actual, this was from the New York Times, so you can actually say New York Times, right? And New York Times, because it's a larger source, that would go in italics, okay? And the italics is right here. The other ones would be quotation marks. All right. So some of his main points are that the oceans are full of toxic plastic, right? You know, it is ruining the food supply. It is causing environmental problems. It's a source of hormone disruptors, hormone disrupting chemicals. Okay, and then if we go back, he has some other things that he majorly talks about. Sorry, wrong essay. He talks about, oh, recycling is a problem, right? Is that recycling is a problem. All right. He also talks about like how little government regulation. There's, you know, little government regulation. Okay. Little government regulation. Let's see if we're missing any other of his major points here. Oh, we don't necessarily even know the consequences, right? You know, already the consequences are bad, but we don't know all of the consequences, right? Like that it could actually be even worse than we think. Okay, let's see here. Preventing synthetic debris, disposable plastic. Let's see what else there was. Governments. And like his main idea, right, is that we have to ban the most polluting plastics. So they say, right, is his major, like they say, is we must ban the most polluting plastics, right? And you can have a quote for that later. And so now we want to come here and we want to think about what do these two authors have in common, right? So how are we going to know that? We're going to come up here and we're going to look at what they have to say. Well, one of the things that they both say is that there's very little debate that plastic is toxic. So what do they have in common? There is little debate that plastic is toxic, right? They also is toxic to the environment and animals, right? Let's see. What else do they have in common? I mean, they both kind of talk about like recycling is problematic. You can also say that, you know, it is complicated. But remember, you're going to need some kind of quote from the text for each one of these. And these are all the things you're going to actually use them in your paragraph later. So those are some of the major things. Another thing is we have to limit consumption. Okay, so that's another one. How do these two arguments differ? So let's go ahead and we'll start and we'll just actually put Adler. What does he say as opposed to? Adler talks about how banning all plastic is not necessarily the answer, right? Whereas Moore says that we must ban the most polluting plastic. And he actually lists plastic bags as one of them, as one of the things we should ban. So, I mean, that is a major difference that you would want to talk about. That Adler talks about how maybe banning plastic bags isn't necessarily the right thing, or that bans in general might not necessarily be the thing. And so one of the things that Moore talks about is that he wants a lot more government regulation. On plastics dumped in the ocean. What are some of the main things? Let me go ahead and go back. He doesn't really talk about that, as opposed to like he really sort of criticizes the studies conducted aren't good either. Yeah, increasingly environmentalists are pushing for laws that include fees for all single-use plastic bags, and that require bags to be made with recycled content. That's the percentage of Massachusetts Sierra Club has advocated for the state. And so he really seems like he's not on board with this. Some social justice activists who work in low-income urban neighborhoods or communities of color also argue that plastic bags are a particular scourge. Yeah, I think I would have to look a little hard for that. People look at paper and say it's degradable, therefore it's much better for the environment. No. Okay, so it's complicated. This is really like more his they say. What if they're not good either? As in Australia, there's no easy answer, he says. He just says the paper for paper bags come from recycled mill. The ideal city bag policy would probably involve charging for paper and plastic single-use bags, as New York City has decided to do, while giving out reusable, recycled plastic bags. So, I mean, this is his they say. I'm actually going to go ahead and copy this because this is a pretty good. Here's his like serious they say. I probably should have put that up there. So let's go ahead and we'll stick it in here like as one of his main points, because this is a really good like they say also. Okay. And one of the things that I want you guys to look at is notice how I went back, I saw something and I changed it, right? There's no one answer here. All right. So we have that. So what could we say? And we could say, that, Adler seems in favor of plastic or of some consumption taxes, but does not seem as pro-government regulation on plastics. Okay. So he sort of sees, plastic, in the environment and climate change as a whole to be the biggest issue. And then this is where you would do what you want, your reaction is, right? So what's your general reaction, right? My reaction, you don't have to say this because other people might agree more with Adler. My reaction is to agree with both ideas, but to lean a little bit more towards more. And so that's what I actually might write in mine, is I would say, and I'm going to erase this pictures. I have to agree with both authors, but lean more towards Moore's point of view. Now, whenever you write this, you don't get to just say that. You have to actually explain what those points of view are, and so you will do that later on in your essay. But I'm going to go ahead and just put that's my general reaction, because, I think, charging for overconsumption is good, as he suggests for both. And I'm just kind of like doing this off the top of my head here quickly, both plastic and paper, and I agree that it is complicated, but I tend to lean towards more in that I think it is important to ban all plastic as soon as possible, right? Or all damaging plastic or whatever. And obviously there would be other things, right? I'll go ahead. I'll leave this here so you guys can see it. Okay. So what stood out to you about the readings? You're gonna have to tell me what stood out to you. I think even though I have heard people talk about the Great Plastic Patch before, it's still just astounding to hear. I think one of the things that still is a little bit difficult to hear is recycling, that recycling is really a problem, that things don't get recycled. And then this is the thing I think a lot of people are having problems with. Naysayers, like the counter argument. What could somebody else say? I think one of the things I would consider that they don't really talk about enough is the economy, right? That, we must consider the economy. And I would actually take a quote from Moore where he says that, right? That no, this was plastic. He actually talks about somewhere in here where, oh yeah, but in the end, the real challenge is to end our economic model. So I'm gonna, copy that. Yeah, that's the problem with this book. Let me go ahead and go back to an example here. I'm gonna put in quotation marks so that I know. Put this in quotation marks. I put the quote, then I would put more because I know that this is from Moore. You don't really need page numbers. I suppose I could get them because it is the They Say, I Say, page 330. So you would put the page number in there. For those of you who have not done the quoting inquisitive yet, that's what it would look like. Make sure you put in quotation marks and make sure we know it's more. I'm putting in there. That way I would know later on to use that. One of the things that we're not really considering is the economy. He talks about how the economic model that thrives on waste products, however, our economy does thrive on this system. Some people might say that we need to work within this system because we can't change that quickly, right? I would actually say that we need quick change, but that's what a naysayer might say. Others might say or might argue that this is an issue for corporations. You can talk about that. Moore mentions this, but doesn't really discuss how packaging is the choice of producers, right? Not necessarily consumers, and it does feel as if consumers are being blamed for something that's not necessarily their fault. And hopefully you have lots of other ideas too. That's just kind of the things that come to my mind. So this is the first part of the planning activity. Hopefully you guys have a good idea now of how to do this, and you can get started on it right away.